Welcome to Not Entirely Unlike Tea with Christine Collins. Hey there, this is Christine Collins, and I have for you today some useful, practical little tips around something called anchors. And to explain it, I'm going to give you an example from a recent experience that I had in my life that hopefully you will benefit by hearing about. So we recently went away on a trip, and normally when I travel, I bring along with me many of my bedtime things that help me to kind of unwind and get relaxed to sleep. And for anyone who doesn't know me that well, I have had years of time where sleep was a major issue for me, where anxiety was always at least a little bit present in my life. And over those years, with a variety of different mindset tools and help from some very talented practitioners, along with just getting to know myself really, really well, I have been able to develop some personal protocols that work for me. So I also want to start by saying that sharing this story is in no way intended to provide sleep protocols. I'm not a sleep expert, but I am going to share a few of them in conjunction with this concept of having anchors and associations, which can be powerfully helpful for a variety of different issues, not just sleep. So I have developed a really great bedtime routine for me, and there are several layers to it. So I have some little rituals that I do about winding down at a proper time before bed. And I should say with a caveat, it's not always a proper time, but it is a proper protocol. So there are some really basic things that sleep experts do talk about in terms of things like giving your body a break from processing food at an early hour so that you have the opportunity to truly be in rest mode. So stopping eating and drinking by a certain time of the night, at least a couple hours or more before sleep. Taking care of any worries or anxiety with a variety of different mindset tools that you may have at your disposal. Things like EFT tapping, hypnosis, journaling. There are so many things out there that can be useful for that. And also using some anchors. So an anchor is essentially just a symbol or a representation at a subconscious level that you have paired together with a specific state, an emotional state. It's not that different from the concept of a Pavlovian cue. And by pairing an activity or ritual like sleep with certain practices or certain things that you have around you, when you start to do those practices, it sends a signal subconsciously that it's almost time for bed and for rest. So this can kind of help your mind unwind along with your body. So little things like dimming the lights, doing some gentle yoga or yoga nidra, perhaps rubbing your feet or legs with a soothing scented lotion, or whatever works the best for you. You can use various different scents. You can use other sensory details such as sounds. So for example, I use noise machines, not only to block the noise, because we happen to live in an area where there's a fair amount of traffic, particularly very early in the morning. So it's not just to block the noise, but it's also a cue or a signal to my body and my mind that it is now time for sleep to happen. And subconsciously, when they're turned on, there's a signal that the sleeping hours are happening now. Same thing can be true with tactile sensations. So you could use specific types of sheets or blankets or pillows. So having that anchor can be very helpful paired together as a practice or ritual or sensory experience, along with whatever your desired outcome or emotional state is. And you can use this across a variety of different spectrums. So you can use it for success. You can have an anchor that represents peacefulness or an anchor that represents excitement. And the more you continuously reinforce that anchor, the more potent it becomes. So if you've spent 10 years brushing your teeth before bed and you have that now as a signal that it's bedtime, that's going to be a very well-worn road in your brain. And sometimes these anchors can happen for us without us planning them or intending them. So for example, if you smelled freshly baked chocolate chip cookies every time you visited a particular person's house, eventually you'll begin to associate visiting them with that scent. So it's a wonderful tool to help along a goal or to smooth over something that was once difficult, such as sleep used to be for me and perhaps has been for you. And you may also want to do things like create positive associations with the setting. So similar to an anchor, an association is two things that you've paired together. So if you have a particular room in which you typically sleep, which many of us do, we associate that space with sleeping, which is one reason why sleep experts often recommend that you don't do things like work in your bedroom or specifically inside your bed, like with your laptop. Or if you are struggling to sleep, you're struggling with a bit of insomnia, it's usually recommended that if you're laying there miserable for a really long time, that you get up and go do something else so that you don't continuously reinforce an association of your bed with that uncomfortable feeling of insomnia. And the idea there then is to associate the bed and the bedroom with feelings of relaxation, restfulness, and sleep itself. So I've been through all of those things for many years, developing different routines that work well most of the time. Unless there's something going on that's particularly stressful that I'm really anxious or really worried about, most of the time my rituals, my associations, my anchors, and all of my mindset work well together to actually work in terms of helping me sleep. Now, I still don't sleep at the most normal hours, but I am actually sleeping. So going on this trip, I decided somehow that all of those years of success, I got, I think, a little bit overconfident and did not want to pack many of the items that I have now built for myself as associations and anchors. Things like pillows or blankets, things like the sound machines, the noise machines. I was just a little overconfident about it translating in that new environment and therefore kind of failed to do my part of planning that protocol while I was away. Additionally, I did not spend the usual amount of alone time and downtime that I'm accustomed to, which has now become an anchor and association for sleep time. And I didn't give myself that downtime and unwind time in the evening before going to bed. Normally, after I finish whatever I'm doing, whether I'm working on something in the evening, I usually try to make sure I have like maybe an hour where I'm just reading a book or doing something that's more soothing or more relaxing before actually attempting to sleep. And partially just being in a new environment, I didn't have full access to the things that I do when I'm at home. Then you also take into account other factors in a different new environment. Other elements are also different. Things like lighting, you have different options for lighting. Things like temperature can be very different. And for many people, they need to be much cooler when they're sleeping. That's not necessarily true for everyone, but that does seem to be kind of an average. And also for those of us who may be more prone to anxiety or who are very self-aware of our emotional response to things, simply being in a new, different environment may subconsciously feel unsafe because we are not familiar with the general risks and the environment itself. And so therefore it can take time to kind of relax in this new setting. And often the very first night we spend anywhere else can be kind of an adjustment period because it's the first time that you're sleeping in that bed or with those pillows. It's the first time you're learning how the systems and the lights and everything work and kind of figuring things out. It's all new. So often that first night is not the best night of sleep and it can be an adjustment period. And so in those situations, if you have created really good anchors, either with physical objects or you have some associations with some rituals and some practices, those things, if you're able to, bring them with you because you can kind of replicate what worked well for you at home. So things that you have reinforced over a long period of time, you can take along with you. And then it's really important that you actually bring them and use them, which is the thing that I did not do. And so I entered into this trip, as I said, rather overconfident, expecting to be completely fine because I've had such a long period of relative success in terms of sleep patterns over the last couple of years. And I really underestimated the value and importance of those sleep anchors and associations that I've created. Found myself in a position where I had almost none of those usual things. So what ended up happening? Well, I ended up having a great time on the trip, so I have absolutely no regrets. And fortunately, my poor night of sleep was only that first night, and I was fine after that. But I realized that first night, laying awake very, very late into the early hours of the morning, I realized too late some of those failures that I had made in terms of not giving myself access to those protocols that I had created. Now, I want to add an extra layer here because I found out the next day that some of those failures were not entirely the anchors and the associations. I did discover that I consumed caffeine unknowingly. So I don't use caffeine at all. I've been caffeine free for many years now and very happy with that, very satisfied with my energy levels and that sort of thing. However, sometimes when you travel and you do things different to how you're used to doing them, you can end up in this situation, which is I ended up having a smoothie that I didn't know had caffeine in it. And normally when I'm at home, I have a pretty consistent routine in terms of food and drink. So I know which things affect me in certain ways and which things I can tolerate and can't tolerate. And so I have pretty good consistency in terms of how I'm feeling, particularly in regards to things like that would impact your sleep. And so I'm very careful to avoid caffeine, and I don't know for sure how much of it I consumed, but it was rather late in the day. It was kind of like a very late afternoon drink. I had no idea that there was caffeine involved and consequently was up most of the night. So I'm very sensitive to caffeine, as some people are. I know a lot of people consume caffeine, and that's completely fine for you. But if you are not used to having it, having a little bit, and I think in my case it was a fair amount, can have a big impact on your sleep, especially if you consume it late in the day. So it turned out that it was a combination of all of these things, because I think if I had had some of the other anchors and associations that are part of my protocol, I might have been better off at least. I probably still would have had an impact from the caffeine, but it might have been minimized more. So it was kind of like this perfect storm of combination of all these different factors, physiological and psychological, that I placed myself into this situation. And so my lessons and my takeaways are, number one, definitely use anchors and associations because they really work. It's very effective for your brain to create an association between an emotional state or a sensation and a sensory detail like a sight, a sound, a scent, a smell, and things like textures and tactile experiences, the specific fabric of a specific blanket, and that sort of thing. You can associate those things together with a feeling of restfulness, relaxation, and sleep, as well as using your mindset tools in a ritualistic way, in a way that trains your brain that, hey, when I listen to this hypnosis or when I do this activity, I am now unwinding, I am now preparing my body and my mind for sleep. And when you do that and you do it successfully and repetitively over a long period of time, it can have a tremendously beneficial effect for you. And that's not to say that we can't step outside of our norm and have new experiences, but I think if you are someone who is prone to anxiety or has had a lot of experiences of trauma and being in new environments and in new situations creates anxiety for you, then kind of determining for yourself which elements of your comfort level and your safety zone can you bring along with you into that new experience, or to have something to support you as you're traveling or doing new things. And this can certainly be very relevant even if you're at home, but you're just doing something new. So let's say you have set a new goal for yourself. You are reaching to achieve something that you have not done before in your business or in your personal life. It can be very helpful to examine where some anchors and associations could be created to support you in those endeavors to make it feel safer. And one that I talk about really often is using tools like visualization, which can allow that experience to feel more familiar as you experience it in your mind before trying to go and do it out in the world. So we have lots of these beautiful little tools and anchors and associations that we can use to create protocols for ourselves to make life easier in general. And if that interests you, if you'd like to have a variety of tools at your disposal, tools like hypnosis, yoga nidra, visualization, and EFT tapping, my mindset membership, the Hypno-Pothecary, gives you access to all of those things. And what's really great about it is that it's on demand. So if you are in a hotel overnight in a strange place and you're all by yourself, you can't call your therapist at 3 o'clock in the morning or reach out to a friend or something else at that hour of the day or night, it's very, very useful to have on-demand mindset tools that are there for you whenever you need them. And you can check all of that information out in the show notes at the very bottom. I hope you found this to be interesting and helpful. And until we connect the next time, I wish you the most magical and creative rest of your day. Thanks for listening. This is Christine Collins at transformcreate.com.